This is Two Girls, One Ghost.
Two girls, one ghost. Can you tell everyone what my new motto of life is?
Is it the one that I just gave you?
The one you literally 2 seconds ago told me.
It's completely stolen.
Mm.
I said Sabrina should just use the slogan that Cookie Crisp cereal has and just use it to get through this phase of life. Fresh air, green trees, and chocolate chip cookies for breakfast.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to make one little asterisk change is I'm going to do oatmeal raisin cookies for breakfast.
So good.
And I have been ordering Levain cookies like maybe once a month, and I'll order like 4 and I eat them
As
in
you
like
should.
one sitting. It's kind of scary.
I understand that. I can't ever order like a box or like a kit of something because I will eat everything within 24 hours. So I also have to space out my orders. I can't just be like, oh, I want Levain. Let me order a dozen and I'll put some in the freezer. No,
No.
If I order 12 are being eaten in 24 hours.
They're devoured.
They'll be in the freezer and I will like almost break my tooth to eat it from the freezer.
I literally have zero self-control. So my self-control takes place before it ever can get into my space. My self-control comes from no bringing it into my home, no ordering it. Otherwise, it will be consumed very quickly.
I feel that so hard.
Also, hi, we're your ghostesses. That's Corinne. I'm Sabrina. And we're experiencing life at a high intense place right now.
Yeah, that just made me think. I immediately, my brain, instead of just explaining what's going on, I was like, I need to buy a lottery ticket. I just looked down at my phone. I was like, I should buy a lottery ticket.
Do you pick your own numbers or do you do random numbers?
No, I always do random. I heard that you have a better chance of winning if you do random.
That makes sense.
And the only gambling I do is I do the Mega Millions and I do the Powerball. And I have never won more than $2 on either. And I very rarely win those. But I kind of have a rule, which is so ridiculous. Unless it's like $700 million, I won't play. Because otherwise, it's not enough money.
It's not worth it. I feel like you have to buy, like, you can't just like buy one ticket randomly. Like the chances of you actually getting or winning from a random one ticket versus buying multiple tickets and like buying them constantly, you know? But then you're spending so much more money.
Thanks, Sabrina. Now I'm definitely not going to win because that's what I do. But I also don't want to get too into gambling, you know? I got to have some, I got to hold myself back, even though I've talked about gambling, winning the Powerball on this podcast for 7 years straight.
We're still working on self-control. We're coming up with little games to trick ourselves.
I'm coming off of an intense cry session to Sabrina before we recorded. Because she said, how was your weekend? And I just started crying.
Yeah.
Because I'm pregnant and the black line appeared. I'm going to start crying again. Oh my God. The black line appeared on my stomach and it's so gross. And it freaks me out. And I hate my belly with a black line.
Put the belly masks on so that you don't have to look at it.
It's so disgusting. I'm going to vomit right now. Like literally thinking about it.
Does it look like the shrimp line?
Yes. And it's
That's kind of what I pictured.
Literally just appeared. It's so faint, but I know it's going to darken. And
what is it
so
exactly?
Gross. I guess it like always, I'm like tears rolling down, like snot bubbling out of my nose. I guess it always exists in us, but it just like becomes more apparent as it's like estrogen or progesterone or like the combo of the two. Then it starts to go away. Sometimes babies are born with it on them if their mom has like really increased levels of those hormones. I don't really know, but it's disgusting. And I hate it. So
I'm very sorry.
I will cry about it.
This is your party. You can cry if you want to. That's your motto, and mine is fresh. What is it? Fresh air, trees, and chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah,
and yours
mine is just.
It's your party. You can cry if you want to.
I'm gonna probably be crying the entire time until the child leaves my body.
If you ever want to give me some of your tears, I'm happy to take some. My tear ducts are dried up. I have no feelings, no emotions. It's constant stress.
I don't really want to refill your well. I feel like you've experienced enough.
I've cried all the tears that my body could produce.
Oh, man. So we're really stable over here. Thanks for coming back
here. Mood up.
Woo, baby. Here we are. Vague
We
sentences.
know that you listen to Two Girls, One Ghost to escape the world and listen to something that's a little bit different. But hey, we're going to make you sad real quick.
We are. And actually, I have one more pregnancy thing to say.
Please.
Sabrina, you and I have talked about the feeling and how much we hate it to like stick a Q-tip in our belly button or something like that. So one, my belly button has not popped out, but the depths of it is becoming shallower and I can actually fit, like I can feel the end.
Sorry, like
One.
that.
Yes, it's gross. It's so gross. I mean, guys, it's still an inch away from like ever appearing. I don't know what the bottom of it looks like. We might never find out. But people, I feel like, talk about how amazing it feels to feel your child kick inside of you. There have been some angles like on the sides of me. There's certain pressure points that when I'm getting hit there, it literally feels like someone is scraping a Q-tip around your belly button. Yeah, that is exactly. The whole time it happens, I go like this. I'm just like wincing, waiting for it to be over because it's so bad. Oh, man.
It's so bad.
I feel like because we talked about it, this is what I've been cursed with in my pregnancies, having to feel that because we talked about how much we don't like feeling that. So now I have to feel it.
I hate that for you so much. Just even
I hope that
thinking
never
about it
happens to you.
Chills throughout my entire body. Well, what happy news do we have? Do we have any good things we can talk about? Let's see. Oh, I decorated my wall.
Oh, yeah, perfect. You have a lovely recording backdrop with a different motto other than the Cookie Crisp. It looks beautiful. We have Raggedy Ann.
Yeah, I have Andy. And these are all things that listeners have, for the most part, made for us or we got on tour. I have a little witchy spoon that says, stirring up some magic. We have the 4 rules of living. I think our listener didn't sign this one, but I think Ashley maybe. And then we have the 2-headed lady.
Oh, it's out of frame.
Jordan Monsell's thing. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, we can't see it. Jordan Monsell just wrote a book.
Really?
Yeah, it's like a compilation of spooky stories. I'm reading it right now. I'll send it to you after.
Wait, fun. Okay.
There's some good stuff. All the good stuff is what's happening to all of you out there that we get to experience alongside you.
That's the good stuff.
Celebrate you. Our listener, Litha, she just planted an apple orchard in her backyard. That seems pretty freaking sweet. There's a lot of good things happening out there.
Can I say one more like negative thing about my life real quick?
Okay, yes, of course.
I think I have a 5 head.
No, you don't.
It's like half my head.
Measure right now.
That's 5.
Okay, well, you're covering your eyebrows. You're supposed to start above your eyebrows.
I'm above my eyebrows.
I can't see your eyebrows. Start above your eyebrows.
I'm above them.
Also, your fingers, you wear such a tiny ring size. I feel like your fingers are half the size of mine. So if I were to put my hand, it would be like 3 fingers on your forehead. I think you just have smaller, delicate, lengthy queen hands.
Queen hands.
You could be like a hand model. And I have the hamburger helper glove of hands. So measuring the forehead doesn't quite. I guess I have 3.
Both my mom and my sister, I don't know if I told you this, but both my mom and my sister within the same week, and I grew up with them. Like they've seen my toes. My toes have been exposed to them for many years of my life. They both made comments about how long and creepy my toes are. And I was like, that's weird. Thank you. And my sister's like, no, like your toes are like the Wicked Witch of the West hand, like fingers, but on your toes.
Did they grow more?
No, I don't know. They're just long.
Honestly, I think that only benefits you in life because what good are short, stubby toes? You can't pick stuff up or hang off of tree branches or propel yourself forward faster if you're ever chased by something in the woods.
I've got the fast, long toes.
Those toes are your superpower. If you were in the ACOTAR book series, which I am like fully ingrained in now,
I just started book 2.
I feel like your power would, Sabrina, you got to power through it because on the 1st of every single month right now on our Patreon, we're doing follow-up discussions on the next book.
I can read a book in a day.
I know. I did read the first one in a day, but the next ones are, I can't read 700 pages in a day.
I've been too depressed to really read, and that's been hard for me, is that like when we're not recording and not researching, I have to like turn The Office or something on and like play Candy Crush because I cannot, like my brain
can't focus. Yeah.
Otherwise I need to sleep. Like that's just my depression.
Because you shut down. Well, I will say, I mean, I am more than halfway through the 3rd book right now. And I feel like the second book and the third book are so freaking good.
I heard book 2 is the best. What do you think?
I really loved book 2 so much. I have so many thoughts, which we'll do a lot of them on Patreon. But book 2 was incredible because it was so much new. Like it was so many new ideas and new concepts and new magic and new worlds.
That's fun.
I feel like it was harder on book 1 with my opinions, not realizing that it was setting everything up for book 2. And I think another thing that I really loved that Sarah J. Maas did was there are some things that are like maybe like a sentence or like a paragraph in book 1. And you don't find out why that was important in book 1 until like almost the end or far into book 2. So it's not like you get the answer right away. So it really is like you realize how much she's kind of like built and layered everything into the story and how much planning has gone into it. So I really loved book 2. I will say, I don't know if this is a popular opinion or unpopular opinion because I'm avoiding everything on the internet ACOTAR related because I don't want any spoilers. But Feyre pissed me off. I was really annoyed with her in book 2. Book 3, she's redeeming herself for me. But book 2, I was like, good Lord, girl, get a grip.
Get a grip. Okay, well, I'm excited. I'm not going to let my depression win, and I'm going to read it tonight.
Pick out your book boyfriend, your book husband. We got a lot of options in book 2.
Was I right about all my love triangles? Once I read it, we'll talk. We'll discuss. I think I'm right.
There were some things that both of us got right with our predictions and some things that we got wrong.
Okay. We can't be perfect all the time.
No, we can't.
Sometimes we have black veins showing up.
We have black vein tummies.
Shrimp lines on our stomachs.
I do think it's funny, though, that you made me realize in our discussion of book 1 on Patreon that Lucian is supposed to be hot because I forgot that all the fairies are supposed to be hot. And I pictured Lucian as Professor Moody.
Like a troll.
Yeah. And then is it the second book or third book we get to like meet some of the other High Lords and the High Lord of the Summer Court, Tarquin. I also forgot, again, he's supposed to be hot. So I pictured Jordan Peele with really long white hair. And it took me a while to realize, like, once other fairies were making comments about him, that, like, he was actually supposed to be this, like, chiseled god.
Absolute best part about reading books is, like, is when you read them with other people, understanding what they picture. That's amazing.
Oh, man. There's only been 2 hot fairies in my... Only the Bat Boys are hot in my mind,
but they're all hot. They're all hot.
Everyone else is... we should do on Patreon, like, cast all of them with who we pictured as we were reading.
That's a good idea. Oh, we should do that. I want to... Because your cast is going to be fucking hilarious.
Mine is going to be random. For sure.
Oh, man. Unhinged.
Okay.
But anyway,
Unhinged.
Podcast, paranormal. Hi.
Hello. We're here to talk about something specific.
I feel like this was a good segue, though, because I don't know the story that you're talking about, but I saw it, the like hint of it. And it's like, you know what? Sometimes the mental state that we are currently in, what I'm currently in, leads to what we're about to talk about.
Yeah. And I guess this is actually perfect to show where we're both at because normally we research like one topic and I've just been so fucking all over the place that I decided I was going to tell you about 3 different places in one episode.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
hell yeah.
Man. It really started because there was this clickbaity title that was basically like all of Mexico had an exorcism. And I was like, what? So then I clicked on that. And then I kind of just went through this rabbit hole, like deeper into all of these stories from Mexico, which, you know, we always say is one of the most haunted countries that we feel based on what other people from Mexico have told us and some of the stories that we've encountered. So I was just like on this spiral. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to pick a few of these places that are really sticking out to me and tell you about them. So starting out with the first thing that got me intrigued with these Mexican stories was the title saying that there was Exorcismo Magno for all of Mexico. And I was like, wait, what? The whole entire freaking country was exorcised?
I think we both got targeted by this article.
And it's funny because this happened back in like 2015. So why is it making the rounds right now?
It's our search terms.
Also, I think it's because we were preparing for your birthday. And you always choose dark.
So you had exorcism on the mind?
Yeah, you always choose dark subjects. So I think we were both probably doing some Googling into the darkness and we're getting targeted. But Mexico is the second largest Catholic country, which I guess Catholicism as a whole, in terms of religion, they have the majority of the people that perform like the classic religious exorcisms. So I guess it would make sense that, they would try or have the idea to exorcise the entire country. Sure. But essentially, this is just kind of like a quick bit of information. What happened was back in 2015, Mexico was like, okay, wow, there's a lot of shit going down. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of things that we don't feel like we have control over. Perhaps to combat this violence and the drug cartels and all this death and conflict, we could view this as a problem with demons. And we've been plagued by darkness. We've been plagued by demons. All of these people are like fighting for their lives, fighting to be good. And there's just so much around them that's making it really hard to live and make certain decisions that we want them to make. Let's exorcise these demons from everyone and from the whole country.
Right.
Also, another thing that was a driving force and contributing factor, I guess, to them wanting to do this was that even the Vatican went as far as to condemn one of the Mexican folk saints, Santa Muerte, because it was depicted as a skeleton or is depicted as a skeleton. And they felt like the saint being a skeleton was too representative of the narco culture of death. And so the Vatican was basically trying to like punish them, being like, we're not going to view a saint as a saint anymore because there's too many people that are doing things that we don't agree with in your country and like perpetuating violence and using this saint as almost like their mascot.
But here's the problem with this. It's like, I understand the intention because like, we've talked about different types of exorcisms where there's exorcism of self, then there's exorcism of a house. And it's like this cleansing of some kind. Mm-hmm. But I feel like if you're doing a non-consensual, not everyone's on the same page, not everyone's on board with this exorcism, it's just not going to work.
Right. And we can't just take all of the things that are happening across an entire country and across like various political and state to state and like drug lines and be like, it's demons, clearly. Like, no, it's so much deeper than that. You're not probably going to fix it, unfortunately, with an exorcism. But they were like, let's try. So quietly on May 20th, 2015, in the city of San Luis Potosi, a Spanish exorcist named Jose Antonio Fortia, Cardinal Juan Sandoval Iniguez, again, I'm so sorry, I'm not a Spanish speaker, so I'm trying my best, Archbishop Emeritus of Guadalajara, and a number of other trained exorcists. They came together, they performed what was considered to be the top dog of exorcisms. So this is the biggest form of exorcism you can have or do.
I'm sorry. They needed more than like 5 exorcists to exorcise the entire world.
I know. Well, I think there were a bunch of other ones, but I think these were the most popular names, like the people that were held higher positions. So they were name dropped.
Dropped.
Still, I feel like
the
also,
exorcism influencers.
They were invited to the tart trip, but the rest of us weren't. I also feel like one of the things I would have thought to be effective is if you like scatter them across the country and all have them perform at the same time, but they were all in one spot.
They should have inquired and consulted with us because we have some ideas. I think they should have placed them.
Obviously, they're doing it wrong.
On different ley lines throughout the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
See, we could have really helped them out.
You're making me wonder what would happen if everyone who could perform a cleansing, a ritual, an exorcism all stood on ley lines and various like sacred energy hotspots and all at the same time did their ritual.
That would be a cool beginning to like a series.
Yeah. Like what the fuck would happen?
I don't know. Let's find out.
Find out when you watch our Hulu special.
Fuck around and find out.
Oh my gosh. All right. So these guys, they all got together and they're all trained exorcists and they were like, let's perform the biggest exorcism we have in our arsenal, which is only used when needed to exorcise entire populations who have had great violence or darkness befall them. And in this case, the great population was the entire population of Mexico. Now, this exorcism was quite problematic, too, because it was not just about stopping death and violence, although they mostly cited basically like the issue with drugs and the cartel. But there were some ill intentions. So these priests, at the same time that they were asking for darkness and evil and demons to be rid of their country and begging God to help them, they were also taking some of their own beliefs in terms of how the world should operate and asking for that as well. So example of this would be they were trying to involve themselves in women's bodies and the right to choose things for your own reproductive system. So it was like, while they were all together, they're like, may as well ask for a few other things. So it wasn't great.
So then I have another problem with this is like they came in with one intention and then they were like, well, while we're here, let's just add a million other things. And it's like, well, then how are you going to expect this to work if your intentions are all over the place?
And they're counteracting each other.
Yeah.
It's like one thing you're asking for liberation and the other thing you're asking to oppress and control.
Yeah.
So that doesn't make any sense. We have notes. Well, this group, they went forward and they were like, the exorcism is happening. Here are our requests. Let's do it. They did whatever magical thing they did in this city, and the exorcism did happen. But did it work? Well, the group said to set the expectations ahead of time, they were like, we don't expect to just snap our fingers and for everything to be better. We rather view these as types of events, something that we should continue to do, like these exorcisms over and over and over and over again.
It's like bleaching your hair. You got to slowly do it.
Right, because otherwise it's not going to work. It's all going to just fall out or turn into something else that you didn't intend for it to be.
Exactly.
So they were slowly chipping away at this, or I guess that was their intention, was to keep coming back together and slowly do this. And maybe over decades and decades, it would all completely resolve itself. There would be no darkness, only light in Mexico, and everything would be amazing. So they were like, hey, yeah, we did the exorcism. We do believe some of the evil entities were banished, but in no way do we believe that we expelled all of them or even close to all of them.
Some guys have poker night every month. These guys have exorcism nights every month.
Kind of fun. Maybe I could get behind that. That's the part of the event that I'm into. It's like every month, it's like their own book club. Okay, so that's basically the end of this exorcism, this clickbait story, which was all of Mexico was exorcised. Not much really changed after the exorcism, but it did get me clicking around to see some other types of horrifying tales and creatures and mysteries in Mexico. And I was like, I really want to dig into some of these cases. So one of the places that I found during my deep dive is called La Casa de Lamentos, the House of Laments. It is in Guanajuato, Mexico. So there was this couple. They were named Don Tadeo Fulgencio Mejia. And I believe he went by Tadeo because in all of the articles I read, they called him Tadeo. And then his wife, Maria Constanza de la Rivera, they moved into this home now, the House of Laments. And it was believed to have been previously operating, I think at one point, like maybe it was a hotel, but it was also a post office. Like it was just used for various things over time. And then it was a private residence, and they moved in and they were super excited to have this new home together. And they were so completely in love with one another. And their friends and family would just like remark about how perfect they were. Like they truly, in every way, seemed really excited to do life together and to have this home and just to like be together. So they were pretty well off moving into this large house. Tadeo worked as a mining engineer. He was very successful. They definitely had some riches. And one day, while he was out working, Maria decided to go into town alone, and she was snatched, and she was dragged into an alley, and she was assaulted, and she was murdered.
Oh my gosh.
Some people say that she never left her home, that it was a home invasion, but nonetheless, the results were the same. Maria was murdered.
Jeez, it's so scary and so sad.
So awful. So Tadeo, he was obviously completely lost, so broken, so horrified by the events that took place and by losing Maria. And a part of him really did die with Maria that day. And so he just felt like he couldn't live without her, and he needed to evaluate his options. Like, what do you do when your soul feels so completely attached to someone and that person is gone and you feel like a half a person, if that?
Right.
So he was like, I need to figure out how I can potentially reunite with my love. I need to figure out what my options are. Perhaps I could bring her back from the dead. So Tadeo, he found a bruja, a witch, and he asked her how he could do such a thing. How can you raise someone to live with you once more? And the bruja told him that he could bring her back. It was possible, but the cost of a life is not free, and you do have to sacrifice others in order to give Maria life once more.
How many others?
A lot. She didn't give a number. It was just like, when it happens, it happens. So in desperation and completely blinded in grief, Tadeo. He was once this really kind and compassionate man, but he just completely lost sense of reality and what is right and wrong in this moment. And he was blinded by the opportunity to bring back Maria. And so he turned dark that day. He was no longer Tadeo. He was now a killer. Who Tadeo would kill didn't matter, according to the Bruja. It was not about a man or a woman or a child or the elderly. Simply a life was a life, and he needed to snuff out lives in order to bring back Maria. So he would kidnap people or just convince them to come over, and he would bring victims into his house down into the basement, and he would kill them each in this like ritualistic manner, waiting for his love Maria to return.
Yeah, I mean, see, this is why like nothing is worth. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
This reminds me, is it a Black Mirror episode where it was like the woman had to like kill like 3 people? Do you remember that one?
No. I probably watched like 5 episodes of Black Mirror.
Okay. I'm like faintly remembering it. It was a weird one where it like didn't really feel like Black Mirror. It felt more like supernaturally. Anyway.
Oh, interesting. I feel like these stories, unfortunately, do find themselves a lot in horror shows and books and stuff because like it does happen sometimes and people lose their sense of being like a normal
morality.
person and yeah. And will just become serial killers, right? And so he became a serial killer under the delusion that killing enough lives in this like ritual practice in his basement that was advised by the Bruja would bring back Maria. And so like eventually with one of his kills, she would appear or communicate with him and give him some sort of direction. So he just kept trying. He kept murdering more people, hoping for Maria to return. But when she didn't, he would just go out again in search of another person, in search of another person, in search of another person. So he obviously failed to resurrect his lover and murdered a number of people. The number of victims is not known, but the police finally did narrow down who their subject was in these mass murders, these serial murders. And Tadeo, once he found out that he was the lead suspect, he shot himself in the head to avoid any punishment for what he had done.
Do we know this is like a true story or is this like an urban legend?
I think it's true because there's literally pictures of them.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Right.
I was really hoping this was like an urban legend.
It sounds like it would be, but it's not. No. This was one of the first serial killers of Mexico, basically.
Jeez.
So when the police arrived to search his property, they found many bodies, body parts, and ashes left over from the rituals in the basement because he would burn the victims, he would, do various things. And there were also multiple texts found about this type of dark magic where you could resurrect people. So he just had a bunch of like texts and like collected grimoires and like any sort of direction in terms of like witchcraft and spells and using black magic to try to do this sort of thing.
It does make me really sad because I understand that like in the same way you can harness like the positive energy in the world, like why not be able to harness the negative energy? And like there is a very much a healthy way perhaps to practice that where it's not harming anyone else or any person. It is really sad to me that there are probably, especially in Mexico, there's so many options of brujas and powerful witches that you could communicate with to perhaps help you through this. And it just makes me sad that it went such a dark route.
I know, because it's like, what was this? This is an interesting thing that you bring up, Sabrina, because it's like the person he went to advised him on this. Did he go to other people before and he just continued to search until he got an answer that he wanted, which was, yes, you can bring back Maria? Or did he just happen to, this was the first person that he met, and unfortunately, she advised him in a way
into like
that
a darker
he took,
way.
Yeah, seriously and to heart, and became very quickly, not that it's her fault, but like.
Well, then I am curious legally, like, is that person also responsible for this?
I feel like the answer in modern times would be yes.
Right?
Because she pushed him, or like at least implanted an idea. But then I guess it would depend on what was the conversation. Was she just saying like, oh, well, I guess, like in the past I've heard that, like in classic spells or whatever, like a life for a life, but I've never seen that be able to be a thing. Like it. Right. What if he just picked up on that one thing and he went with it himself? Because he did have a collection of all these books to try to help him do it. So I have no idea what the actual conversation. I feel like the story places a lot of blame on this woman, but who knows what she actually said. She could have very much said, go out, kill all these people, and you'll be reunited with Maria. Or she just could have been like, there are spells to resurrect the dead, but it does cost another life.
And she could have also even said it as a warning, like, beware though, like something like this requires you to turn against your own moral, you know, like it could have just been like a warning. And he's like, oh, I'm willing to do anything.
This was a bright man who was very kind and compassionate and loved by Maria, loved by all these people, like, I think loved at work, and clearly something broke in him because he was an entirely different person, I think, to even go out and try to have these conversations.
It's just so devastating. And I feel so sad for all these people who got caught up with this man and like trusted him. And obviously his loss is sad, but no loss is ever worth taking other people.
This happened in the 1890s, and the house has since been turned into a museum, allowing curious historians and paranormal enthusiasts to enter the strange and stained building. I mean, the building itself is pretty.
It's so interesting because in the episode that I was going to do a couple weeks ago, when I ended up changing my topic, but there was a house called, I think it was like the Witch House or the La Moira House in Mexico City. And it kind of very similar, like something very dark happened in the house. And now it's a museum.
Right. Well, it's like we all get curious about going. And I guess like historically, architecturally, a lot of them are preserved, and like this house is actually quite beautiful, but like obviously there's a weirdness to the energy because it would be like if there was some historic building that John Wayne Gacy had lived in, and then we like keep it knowing that there was all of these horrific deaths that happened in the basement, but we're like, oh my gosh, architecturally look at the stonework and the arches, gorgeous tile, love.
There's certain places where it's like if something that tragic happened, you don't need to preserve it.
I mean, that's half of New Orleans.
That's
when
true.
We were walking around New Orleans, they're like, this was a fruit salad of body parts. And we're like, great. And now it's an apartment building. Awesome.
True.
So Tadeo, he likely never found Maria in the afterlife, as visitors have seen him wandering the home, perhaps for eternity, as a punishment for all the lives that he took while he was alive.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it also seems like maybe some of the victims are here, or we can hope that maybe it's just a residual haunting, because people do hear the sound of high heels across the floor, some cold spots, and pained screaming heard echoing through the halls. I pray it's residual. Today you can tour the museum, and around spooky season, they also transform the home into more of like a haunted house sort of vibe where they put spooky lights up. Employees will dress in costume. There's sound effects. So it is a little bit more Halloween adjacent in terms of it being this house of a serial killer. But while I was on the topic of searching the dark and mysterious witchy cases in Mexico, I also found, this is like the wildest story. I wanted to end on this one.
Oh.
Because I found another haunted home that's backstory I think could be an incredible movie. I'm sure there's movies out there that have been maybe inspired by this. If not, someone should definitely make one. It's very like Inception style, very magical, but this house is called La Casa de Brujas, the witch's house. And the house is in Mexico City. The story starts out a bit beautiful, and then it just kind of gets weirder. So the building itself, it is this brick Gothic style building. It was constructed in 1908 as a way to commemorate the centennial celebration of independence of Mexico. And the plaza around the house is extremely beautiful. Like this is such a hot spot for architecture, and it's just like very, very gorgeous. I was looking at a bunch of travel blogs and stuff that people had written about it, and everyone's photos, like regardless if someone had a knack for photography or not, like this area looked so beautiful. So it's stunning in terms of what this house is surrounded in. The roofs are peaked and they almost look like witches' hats, which is very fitting given the nickname of the house, the witch's house, which the neighborhood kids...
Wait, I saw this one in my research
the
other day.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so pretty.
Okay, you know where this is going.
Yeah.
So the neighborhood kids, before there was ever a witch to live in here, the neighborhood kids, they did nickname the house the witch's house because of how it looked on the outside. Like the house is wearing a witch hat, basically.
It literally looks like a smiling little witch.
Yeah, it does. And
it looks like it has eyes.
Spooky. Like it sounds spookier than it looks. Like it does look kind of cute. Yeah, it's cute. In the 1970s, the very first witch to live in this house moved in. Her legal name, Barbara Guerrero, but she was nicknamed Pachita. And she lived in the building in the 1970s and for actually a lot longer than that, But she was born in 1900. She had a really horrible childhood. She was basically abandoned by her. Well, I shouldn't say it was horrible. It was horrible for a small period of time because when she was born, she was abandoned soon after by her parents. But then this really nice man from Africa who had moved to Mexico, he adopted her. And he taught her about healing and about oracle work and energy management. And this is kind of how she became a little bit more like woo-woo, magical, witchy being. She would practice this sort of energy work for the entirety of her adulthood. And it all started at a very young age. So by the time that she was an adult, she had people who would come visit her, these clients who were pretty high in status. You know, she would have these prominent politicians, and they would come ask her for help because she also, I mean, I'm calling her a witch, but really she was a curandero, which is like a shaman or a traditional native healer. And she never charged anyone. She would heal people. She would do favors for them. It was like out of the goodness of her heart and the abilities that she felt like she naturally possessed.
That's
and
beautiful.
So her client list grew and grew, and she took on many more high-profile clients as well as just like regular people. She performed numerous types of healing. She would help people find jobs. She would cast spells on political opponents of her clients. And she would also cure illnesses. How would she cure illnesses? Well, it wasn't simply just like, oh, you have a cold, let me give you this like magical potion and remedy. It could be like, you have cirrhosis of the liver. I'm going to remove your liver. Like something like that. So it was not just like illnesses, it was diseases, it was really intense medical ailments.
Wait, was she doing like surgery or was she doing witchcraft to remove the liver?
Both. This is like the weirdest thing. As I kept reading it, I was like, because I thought that this was going to be like a fake out at the end. And I'm like, who the hell is this woman and what can we learn from her? Okay, so she believed that she was a psychic surgeon. Since childhood, Pachita had used herbs and plants to heal people, and this soon escalated to performing full-on surgeries. But it wasn't Pachita performing these surgeries. She would channel a spirit of the Aztec warrior, and I'm going to butcher this name, but Cuauhtemoc, and she called him Hermanito, like little brother. And basically, these surgeries would take place at the hands of the two of them working together. So she would essentially be possessed by this Aztec warrior, and he would perform the surgeries through her body.
It's so incredible.
But it's also terrifying because initially I'm like, there's no way that this is real. I'm sure everyone died who she ever performed a surgery on. Like, this feels like Dr. Death, right?
But she has this like ability.
Yes. So when a surgery was needed, she would perform the surgery being possessed by this ancient Aztec warrior. And she would have this one surgical tool, which was used for all of her procedures. It was this like kitchen knife, basically like a little butcher knife. And she covered the handle with electrical tape. And this is what she would use to just like, no matter what she was working on or operating on, she would just use this knife to cut into people.
Which is like also so concerning for a hygiene, like.
Right.
When you think of surgery, you're thinking about like the sterilization and like hyper clean. This is like, I feel like I'm just picturing it taking place in her kitchen.
It basically was. And also it's like, did she sharpen the knives in between at least? Like, is this a dull knife that she
I like that that's your concern.
I mean, if you don't have the other option, I at least want this to be like the sharpest, cleanest incision that it could possibly be.
Also, I feel like we should say this. I feel like we don't need to, but just so that we do, just say it. Do not try this at home. If someone says that they can perform a surgery on you in their kitchen with their dull kitchen knife, don't agree to it, please.
No, and I'll just tell you this. Pachita is no longer alive. So if anyone says, I am Pachita and I can do this to you, it's not. It's not her.
More like bullshita.
Bullshita. That's what I was thinking. But we're about to get into a weird area of this whole topic where I'm like, what do I believe? I don't know. So her clients, they would come in, they would hope to be healed, and she was, 1, not trained, 2, had no anesthesia or any pain relief thing to provide her clients, but she would somehow be able to put them in this trance-like state. She would slice them open, stating that she could remove any problematic organs and put others in their place, healthier ones that she could just simply conjure out of thin air to heal them. The room had to be dark, lit by only a couple candles, because she said the bright lights would damage the new healthy organs that she would conjure. And she would do all of this with her eyes closed, blind, cutting into. But not her, the Aztec warrior that she has channeled.
Right. Let's also keep in mind, Aztec medicine probably not as advanced as it is today.
No. But also, I don't know, because again, this is getting into a weird spot where I'm like, maybe everything I thought is wrong.
Maybe
at least in this situation.
Know nothing.
So you would think that someone like this, who's performing these surgeries, getting no payment and just like doing it out of the goodness of her heart, you would assume that she would try her best to make sure that any trickery or deception that she was planning to do to like execute on this would be covered up. And so you would think like maybe it would be like just her and the patient. But no, that was not the case. She fully believed in what she was doing. And so she allowed other people into her operating room. So people would come in with their loved ones or someone who was going to
And they'd watch.
help them come home. Yes, they would watch. They would observe her. So like she had her eyes closed the whole time, but they would observe her in this dimly lit space. She would raise her arms up and literally conjure organs or body parts that were needed. So people said that this like fleshy material would just suddenly appear in her hand out of nowhere. And she would then place it into the incision that she made. And also, it's important to note that these people that were watching, they weren't just always family members of the patients, but credible professionals who came to watch her miracles. So actual doctors would come and surgeons would come and be like, Pachita, we've heard of the work that you do. Can we observe your next operation? She'd be like, for sure.
I want a video. I want to watch this.
I know, me too. Well, I don't want to watch, but I don't want to watch the surgery, but I do want to watch the organ just like suddenly appearing out of thin air. So a few hours after she would have these operations or perform these surgeries, she would send the clients home with a bandage and instruct them to rest for 3 days.
For some reason, I just pictured her putting like a tiny little Band-Aid over.
Yeah. It's like the small circle one that they sometimes put on you after a shot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I don't think it was huge regardless, because it would basically be like this bandage that you could just go home with. She would tell you, rest up for 3 days, drink these various concoctions that she had put together for various types of healing, depending on what people were getting done, and that they would be good to go on the 4th day. And these procedures, they're like tumor removals, bone grafts, organ transplants. She would finish them in just a few minutes. And these are surgeries that like modern day take hours to perform. And she would apparently do it in just a few minutes.
And then like weeks to recover from too.
Exactly. But Pachita, few minute surgery, slap a Band-Aid on, rest for 3 days, drink her potions, and you're good to go. And were they? Apparently they were. I didn't find anything saying that anyone has died at the hands of Pachita. And there's also this doctor from Mexico. So his name is Dr. Jacobo Grinberg. He was a neuroscientist, and he used the scientific method to study a bunch of the kind of like more, I always say woo-woo, but I guess like woo-woo-ish practices in terms of healing.
Mm-hmm.
So he used the scientific method to apply to shamanism and meditation and astrology and other similar topics to try to understand like what are these things, if there's anything actually happening outside of just like our brains trying to fill in the gaps and believe in these things. So he was super interested in studying Pachita's work. And subsequently, he spent a lot of time with her, and Pachita let him sit in on numerous different surgeries. And Dr. Grinberg, he was shocked because I don't think he was expecting to experience what was said to have happened in Pachita's operating room. He witnessed numerous surgeries by Pachita where he himself watched as organs and needed body parts materialized out of thin air and wounds instantaneously heal without infection or even scarring. So it would be one thing for him to be like, okay, yes, if we're in a dimly lit area, maybe there's some trickery with like how she suddenly has like a pig's heart or something in her hand. A completely other thing for him to sit there, having gone through medical school and watch someone's like gaping open incision just start to shh in the moment.
It's so wild to me. And it's hard because it's like, if you look at the evolution of surgeries and just how medicine has evolved, we've advanced tremendously over centuries. Even if that's something that we can reach and get to in decades from now, it feels so far from anything we have now that it's just like, how is this happening? And how is she not teaching it to other people, you know? It's just...
And it's all energy work too. Like, it's not even like, you know, when we think of the future, we're thinking of like some soldering machine that like burns and closes the human flesh really fast and helps you heal faster. It's not about that with Pachita. It's just about like the energy and just her being there that like
conjuring organs From where?
Yes, that's a good question. Where are they coming from? Is someone else just suddenly missing a liver?
So wild. Wait, this reminds me of Sierra's story of like, didn't she? Okay, I feel like I'm gonna butcher it, but Sierra from Ladies and Tangents. Was it that she like was missing her appendix, but never had record of having her appendix removed?
Yeah, she had some sort of surgery, and in the process, it was like either her appendix or kidney, or like she was missing something in her. And they were like, "Oh, when did you have this surgery?" And she was like, "I never have."
I never did.
And it wasn't that it was missing. There was evidence inside of her body of like a surgical removal.
Is this like something that happens to other people and that's where these parts are being conjured from?
Is Pachita an alien, maybe, perhaps? And she like spends time on a spaceship and abducts people and does like the reverse organ collection, organ harvesting to then use to heal all these other people under the guise of just like this little old lady who likes energy work.
I feel like we're missing some vital information, but also we're just filling in gaps of nonsense because we don't know.
Right. It does feel like nonsense, but if there was someone who was going to figure it out, it was Dr. Jacobo Grinberg, and that's what he tried to do. So he soon gained the trust of this ancient Aztec emperor who possessed Pachita, and the emperor taught Dr. Grinberg how to manipulate reality, which is what he was doing to basically perform these surgeries, which Dr. Grinberg then called the synturgic theory. And I was looking up synturgic theory because I was like, what the heck is this? And I literally found a declassified document on the CIA's website about this topic because of Dr. Grinberg. So basically, there's this publication that says that the synturgic theory postulates that the brain creates an energetic field, so a neuronal field is what they call it, that expands into space. It interacts with the space-matter continuum and is able to change the informational content of the latter and thus affects other neuronal fields and physical forces. So essentially, I mean, it's kind of hard to digest it that way, but I was doing a bunch of research, and essentially what it's trying to say is there's this field around our reality. It's called a source field, and outside of our brains is the neuronal field, which is where our consciousness lives. So we can kind of think of this as like, this is why I was saying this part reminds me of Interstellar, because it does feel like when he's floating through the library and there's like, it's not a library. He pushes the book out to his daughter, but he's in that kind of like extra dimension and there's all these like lines and numbers and everything's everywhere. So that's kind of what it feels like. It feels like almost like the simulation, and our consciousness lies outside of what we just experience in our own field. And like there's like a blocker basically that keeps us from being able to experience what more is possible and what we're capable of.
This like really just makes me think that life is a simulation and this is proof of it. And some people just know how to manipulate it, but the rest of us are just like cogs in the machine and believe what we've been told.
Quite literally, because like the dumbest way of saying this is that Pachita basically knew how to put in the code rosebud, semicolon, exclamation mark, semicolon, exclamation mark, and could just do whatever she wanted in the simulation.
Yeah.
So Dr. Grinberg, in this theory, he said that most people operate at a level which splits, separating our consciousness from the source field. But for a few people who operate as this like synturgic being, as he put it, you are one with everything. This is very like everything everywhere all at once too. You are one with everything. You have the knowledge of the universe. And theoretically, you could use this to manipulate time, space, gravity. You could materialize organs out of thin air and heal people in a few days rather than a few weeks or months. So it literally is just like, do you know the cheat code? Do you know how to pull what you need from just like the ether of existence? Either Pachita knew or like the Aztec warrior working through Pachita knew. Dr. Grinberg, he published this paper stating, or I guess theorizing rather, how to achieve telekinesis, telepathy, and levitation. All of this is from his work with Pachita and with this ancient Aztec emperor and warrior. December 8th, 1994, Dr. Grinberg and a lot of his material suddenly disappears. And this is right after he published the synturgic theory.
Oh my gosh.
He's never been found. He is a missing person. Vanished. I like literally have chills because again, this feels like it's lore, but it's real.
He just disappeared.
He disappeared. No one knows where he is. And so some people are like, maybe he figured out like how to be the oneness with the source field and like how to basically level up in the game and is like bopped into some other dimension now. Or was he kidnapped, maybe by the CIA or some other service out there?
That's what I think.
And was either killed or is being kept based on his access to something that a lot of us don't understand.
It's almost like I want to have this knowledge and I would love to be able to tap into this, but then it becomes dangerous because you become a threat to the simulation. And who knows about the simulation and can take you out?
Yeah, and it's so hard because it's like, I guess what's the difference between Pachita and Dr. Grinberg? Dr. Grinberg had this reputation, which was of a neuroscientist. Like, he had a lot of credentials, which made people believe in the things that he was publishing. And his work that was being published was viewed as like a professional scientist that should be taken seriously. Where Pachita, who was actually practicing it, it seems like such a wild story that maybe they felt like she was no threat at all because she was just this little old lady living in this house who like had these weird sketchy surgeries.
She also didn't seem like the type of person who was like out there marketing herself. She was more of like it's like a reference word of mouth type of situation.
Yeah. If you know, you know. Well, so Pachita's reputation as a witch and a healer grew, and soon talk of her abilities reached other continents. So I guess it is really a word of mouth thing. And I couldn't really find anything about any deaths on her clients. So I truly think maybe everybody survived. But there was obviously some questions people had about the surgeries and what was being removed and whatnot from these patients. And so people were like, could these be just like weird body parts of animals? Could these be, I don't know, just like a fleshy thing that she like concocted in her kitchen? Like, what is this? And so there was actual testing done on some of the organs that were removed from clients to see what the hell was going on, what these things were. And they came back as confirmed organ matches with the clients that she had taken them out of. So she literally was removing these organs. What she was putting in, I don't think they ever got the opportunity to test that. In 1979, Pachita passed away in La Casa de Brujas. And today people claim to see her spirit wandering through the house, strange shadows, odd noises. They feel a presence lurking about. And even demonic figures are said to roam the walls of La Casa de Brujas. Some have theorized that Pachita's spells have actually trapped these spirits in the walls. So something in her practice, like anytime negative energy or something came, she like basically trapped them in her house. And was like, you can't leave now. You can barely do anything against me. Like, I am your leader now. So basically that Pachita made the house haunted by the work that she was doing and all of the healing that she was doing.
Do people still live there? Is it still a house?
That is a good question. I actually don't know.
Because I would love to live there and just like channel Pachita. Just be like, tell me your ways.
I think you can go in it. I think it might be a museum again now too.
Wow. I mean, listen, I feel like this is one of those topics that can so easily go from, wow, let's just enjoy this magic to, holy shit, what is the truth of the world? Is this a simulation? Conspiracy hats on, red string out, tinfoil. I'm moving into the woods and literally going to start a radio channel to speak to aliens. So it's this fine line.
It is. And this is what happens when you start to spiral deeper and deeper on the internet. Because it literally started with Mexico had an exorcism. Whoa. Mexico's first serial killer, a witch told him to be one. Whoa. And then it's like, and now what the fuck is going on with the universe? And who are we? And where do we even live? And who controls us? And are we all one being experiencing the same thing or a bunch of other ones?
And how deep does our belly button really go?
Yes. And can Pachita fix that? Conjure up more belly button material for me. Patch the hole.
This episode is the perfect example of like what researching looks like for us.
Yeah. And why it feels so impossible sometimes to choose something.
Yeah.
So in this case, I chose 3.
And also another example of how we're never going to run out of things to talk about because we can just go down these rabbit holes.
And also, like, we've been doing this for 7 years. I'm shocked we hadn't heard of this before.
And the fact that we both ended up getting stuck, like the fact that in the last week, while we were both doing research for episodes to record in batch episodes, we both ended up on the same article.
Right. That is weird.
That's strange.
The universe is, they wanted us to talk about this. Or we're just so in sync with like, however we're tethered to each other and connected on this plane that we're getting the same things directed to us.
We're tethered.
Yeah.
I like being tethered to you.
Me too.
Okay.
It's fun.
It is fun. Okay, well, I have a story from our listener, Andrea, and I picked it because of witchcraft. Like I was kind of going on that.
Yeah, perfect.
That path.
I mean, witches were pretty much involved in most of this episode, so.
It is called Curse, Hex, Witchcraft, Cleanse. Trust your gut, trust your pets, and trust your witchy friends' moms. Hi, girlies. My name is Andrea. This is the first time that I write into a podcast. Not that I listen to a lot of them because I'm a bit picky. But I found your podcast in 2023 after feeling I needed spookiness in my life. Your vibes and how funny you two are. Specifically you, Corinne. You are hilarious,
Well,
Corinne.
I love how this episode was like your vibes. And we started out the episode being like, we're depressed and crying. And what is life?
You know what? I guarantee there are some listeners out there who can relate to the depression and they're like, I'm not alone. Let's listen to spooky things to just cope.
Week to week and even sometimes day to day, how much things can swing for a person and what happens in their lives, you know?
So remember how you and I were trying to find a specific story that we read? I wonder if it's this one because Andrea says, I decided to write in after hearing a listener's story about brujeria in episode 80. So we should look and see if that's the same one we were talking about.
Yeah.
I'm from Chile, and Chile has tons of myths, legends, and mystery stories. This experience happened back in 2018, but I remember it as if it was yesterday. Everything started in 2010, maybe a couple of months after Chile's earthquake, that my dad, during his morning in downtown visiting clients, bumped into an old nanny of ours. To have a nanny in Chile is pretty common, and it's not super fancy. But this nanny was struggling with work and finding a place to live, so my dad thought she could stay with us, like old times, for a bit. She had left us in 2005-ish, so it's been about 5 years. My dad came home later that day and told us that, I'm going to call her N, was going to stay with us for a while until she managed to get back on her feet again. And we were thrilled because we had a really great time with her and liked her a lot. So basically the way it was going to work is that she was going to be doing the cleaning and cooking for the house in exchange of living with us, like a live-in nanny situation.
Yeah.
This dragged way too long for way too much time, but my parents are the nicest people in the world and they rarely say no, except if you're their child, LOL. The first years, were good. She found a job close by, she kept the house tidy, cooked the yummiest meals, etc., etc. It was also very weird because to every family event or trips, there she was. She was everywhere and anywhere with us. My parents' house was always a very warm place with a very good vibe. We'd always have people over to party and overall have a good time. But as the years passed, N started to do less and less in our house, and in 2017, there was a major shift. Suddenly, the house had a weird, cold feeling. It was gloomy. That's when N got diagnosed with renal insufficiency and shortly after started getting dialysis. Mind you, this person was young, maybe like 30s, early 40s.
Yeah.
I started to feel so much anger, disgust, and hatred towards her. Even my dog started to bark and growl at her sometimes. But also, at the same time, I felt sorry for her because of the whole kidney thing and how fragile a state she was in. She was so weak that months after she was diagnosed with TB, she got it controlled, and luckily, no one else in our family got infected, but she still had it. But then, beginning of 2018, I sort of opened to my eyes what was going on. I started questioning many things. Why is she here? Why is she not paying rent? Why is she eating our food? Why is she not cooperating with utilities if she lives rent-free? Why isn't she cooperating with the house generally? Then, May of 2018, my dad got diagnosed with lymphoma, a cancer that affects your lymphatic system. Doctors found it pretty early, but it was still shocking and terrifying. I remember that my mom got my brother and I into a living room and held our hands and told us about our dad. Both my brother and I cried, but it was in that very moment that something sparked in me. And my first thought was, is N going to continue living with us? She has TB and maybe it's not contagious, but my dad's immune system is going to be depleted. And if he could contract this, it would be worse.
Right.
So I asked my mom if that was a risk that she was willing to take. She took a minute and she said, we'll talk about it later. It was then the beginning of June and my dad was given his first date for chemotherapy. And N was still in our house. I started to get in arguments with my mom that she should man up and kick her out of the house, which that fight didn't end up well because my own mother ended up kicking me out of the house, saying, if you don't like it, the door is wide open. It was brutal. I wasn't going to be home then, so I went to my friend's house and I told his mom about this whole situation. She, without taking her eyes off of me, said in a very serious and quiet voice, Mija, you should talk to this woman. and she gave me a piece of paper with a woman's name and number. I came home the day after and I could feel the regret in my mom's eyes. I was hurt, so I was not going to make things easy for her, so I kind of just ignored her. Later, I was watching Game of Thrones and she sat by my side and told me how awful she felt for screaming at me and kicking me out, that she never meant it, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, Mom, but that doesn't change my question or my request. We need to get this woman out of the house for Dad's safety. She agreed, but then she crumbled down crying, saying the whole situation was too much. So I told her what my friend's mom suggested, and she said she would give it a go. So I did. That night, I messaged the woman, who I will call G. Without giving too much information about what was going on, she said, you and your mom should come tomorrow at 9 p.m. So we went, and she read cards from my mom, and we found out that N had actually tried to curse and hex us.
The woman that was living with them?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh, this is like totally taking a different twist. Because at first I was thinking, you know the Sandra Bullock movie Bird Box? And how there's like the dilemma within that where it's like keeping her child safe or both of the children safe and like that one child's innocent. Like I could understand this person's mom's dilemma of like, okay, my husband should come first because he's the family, but this person feels like family and she's going through so much and she's so weak. Like to just kick someone out at that point feels, it's so hard to make that decision.
Right. But also keep in mind, this woman has been living with them since 2010. It's now 2018.
Yeah, she's like family.
So N had apparently tried to curse and hex us. Her goal was to take over the household, which is why my parents were so blindsided. And now that I think about it, my mom during all of those years was never taken in consideration for household decisions. My dad would always ask N. According to this witch, she paid a decent amount of money to get this done. And she comes from the countryside. And in Chile, the weirdest shit happens in the countryside. But as you girls might know, when you throw that kind of energy into the world, that can bounce back in the shape of illnesses or misfortune. And geez, did that woman have lots of illnesses and misfortune upon her. Anyway, G gave us instructions on what to do. We had to get rid of her before midnight, as that day happened to be a magic day for cleaning and new beginnings. And once my mom banished her, we then had to tell my dad firmly that she has to go, and if he doesn't like it, my mom and I would be leaving the house for good. The next day, G would perform a cleansing of the house. So we left G's house. It was 11:20 p.m. We had 40 minutes to get home and do all of this. I was driving. I had so much adrenaline running through me. Are we going to make it in time? I don't know. There were a lot of lights, but I kid you not when I'm telling you that every stupid light was green on our way home. All of them. It was like the universe was trying to help us get home, and it was taking care of us. We got home and my stomach dropped. I felt so nauseous. It felt like it was out of a horror movie. I swear that my house didn't even look like it used to. We were in the living room. We held hands and I told my mom, you can do it. You are powerful. You've just been asleep. You need to claim what's yours, your house, your family, your peace, your energy, your happiness. I've never seen her struggle so much to face something. So she did it. She went into N's room and thanked her for the first years and the immense help she gave us, but it was time for her to move on after 8 years. And she didn't want her to leave next week or anything. No, she wanted her to leave tomorrow. And then we went to my dad, who was soundly asleep, and woke him up, and we told him that N was leaving tomorrow. He was like, why? And we were like, because she has to. It's been more than enough. And if he didn't like it, we would be leaving instead. He was like, no, I understand. We said goodnight and we went to bed. Girls, I have had bad nights, but that one, Jesus, it was so bad. I dreamt that I confronted her in my dreams and she was like, why are you doing this to me? And I said, it's because it's been enough. You've been leeching from my family. And then it was all red and black and confusing. I woke up sweating a couple of times. I don't know. It was awful. I woke up the next day and I was tired and I asked my mom how she slept. She said, awful. She explained her dreams to me. They were the exact same dreams I had had.
Oh my gosh.
We went downstairs and Anne was packing her things. She didn't say a word of gratitude or anything to us. She seemed mad, packed the last of her things and was gone. Didn't say a single word to us. Anyway, lunchtime came and my dad wasn't really speaking to us because I was the bad guy, of course. But G came to our house with a friend of hers and they did the cleansing together. G is usually getting the energy and entities away while her friend is praying and supplies Gigi with power. As Gigi was preparing, my dad came downstairs saying how he didn't believe in G or anything that she was doing. It was awkward and he left. I apologized to G and she was very understanding. And she told me his reaction was normal, that he was still maybe in a trance from the spell, hex, and curse. Would the cleanse work on him if he wasn't there, I asked? And she said, yes, that's fine. All we need is a picture of him. On the dinner table, we had a plate with a white candle and a glass of water on the side. She had a bowl of herbs with sticks and whatnot, and they started praying and asking for protection and to bless us. She lit the bowl and the smoke started to come out of it. She put the bowl on the ground and told us to walk above it. I was the first one. All good. The smoke and fire maintained regular, but then my brother walked, and wow, there was a burst of flames that came out as soon as he walked past it. Same with my mom.
What?
G told us that it was because they were more affected by the spell. My mom and brother and I were coughing and crying, holding hands while G was praying with her friend, blessing us and protecting us. She explained that the coughing and crying was the release of negative energy within us. They added a few more herbs and started cleansing the house. Apparently, they felt 7 entities or shadows in the house. One was in her room, and I saw G fight with it. She would faint, and then her friend would start praying harder, and G would come back to reality and banish whatever was there. They repeated this in every room on the first floor. Then the smoke was way too much for me. I'm asthmatic, so I was told to sit down on the couch and wait there. My mom went with G and her friend to the second floor, and according to my mom, my room was fine. But my brothers, she said that the second they stepped into the room, the bowl blew up several flames several times. Same with my parents' room.
This is so wild. Oh my God.
I swear that bowl that they took to the second floor was barely smoking, but when they came down, there was flames burning from it. I asked if they added anything to it, and my mom was like, nope. Apparently their bedroom, my parents' room, was the most charged. You know how I mentioned that the bowl had herbs? Well, what was left over in that bowl looked like tar. It was black, sticky, gross.
Ew.
G put the tar and burned it in the fireplace, but man, that thing was not coming off. In Chile, we have a plant that we call ruda. I believe in English it's rue. It's magnificent. It can cure stomach aches, but also if you have one in the front of your house, it's supposed to help with bad energies. And it is said that if it dries out, that there is a bad energy in your house. As you might have guessed, ours was dead. G told us to get the plant and burn it with the tar, so we did. Then we went to check the plate with the candle that was almost completely consumed, and the wax formed awful looking faces that almost looked demonic. And that glass of water that had been on the table, which was plain water, all of a sudden now was dirty and gross, and it had bubbles like a white slime on top. Absolutely
oh my God.
Disgusting.
Literally everything that can be affected is affected.
Yeah. So we took the melted wax and put it in the bathroom along with the gross water. And we cussed the bad energy, saying it was not welcome ever again in this household, and we banished it from this plane. My mom, brother, and I sat on the couch, and this feeling of relief was astronomical. I felt sleepy, in peace, warm, and happy. We thanked G and her friend, and they blessed us once again. After that, I had a few more dreams about this woman, N, and a friend told me to put her name in the freezer to stop her from anything. So I did, and I've never dreamt of her ever again. A few of our friends have seen her out and about in our town and say she looks evil, like somber. The relationship with my parents and the dynamic in general with the family improved so much after she was gone. Our house felt like our house again, warm, cozy, happy, and not scary. My dad is now cancer-free, my mom is back at her Virgo powerful era, and we are all happy. Thanks for creating a space we can tell stories without being judged. I hope to hear my story eventually. I have lots of catching up to do, but love you girls. Have a great day.
Andrea, I was all over the place with this story too, with my opinions. Because in the beginning, I was like, okay, I understand. Like, this person must feel like family after so long. But then at the same time, I was like, well, Andrea doesn't feel that way. Andrea is very quick to be like, no, I think something's wrong. There's a lot of like gross, weird energy around this person. Let's get them out. Where if someone had been living with you for that long, you would think that they would feel differently. But Andrea didn't.
Right.
So it was really interesting because I was thinking about all of this like as the story was going, and then the fact that there wasn't nearly as much smoke or reaction around Andrea, like the veil, the glimmer, the glamour, or whatever, was not there for her as much.
It reminds me of the Sex with Faye story where it's like that one girl was with that group of guys and she was the only one not impacted by this like whatever glamour the Faye was putting on these guys. And Andrea just saw through it.
And it's so interesting because it's like the whole family feels like everything is maybe normal to an extent, but it's clearly not, because then when this person is removed from their lives and they're cleansed and they go through this whole like ritual practice to kind of like remove that type of energy or whatever, like hex was put on them, life was different after. Like there is a before that happened and an after, and it's a very clear divide.
Yeah.
And things were better, relationships were better, everything was better.
It's scary how, I mean, obviously this is happening over such a long period of time, but it sounds like it kind of was happening really slowly, that it wasn't until Andrea's dad was diagnosed with cancer, that like Andrea was like, wait, hold on. Like all of her concerns were very justified of like, okay, this woman in our house has TB and is like constantly sick. If my dad is going through chemo and his immune system is like completely messed up, like we need to make sure he's being taken care of and like in a very healthy environment.
Bubble wrap him up. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But it took that almost to break the spell.
You're right. I do wonder what drove this woman to try to do this. Because the first few years seemed so great. So did something happen after the fact?
Right.
Was 3 or 4 years in?
What did she want?
There a moment? What happened to her?
And what more did she want? Because she was already living somewhere for free. And it seemed like a great situation. Like, I don't know. I feel like this could have gone in such a different direction where things could have been very happy. And like, it just, I don't know. I just feel sad. It does
make me wonder if she encountered something out there in the world, you know, where maybe there was an attachment, something darker that found her that was kind of like whispering these things and pushing her to do these things.
Yeah.
Was it fully just like on her own accord that she did all these things, or was there an outside influence?
I always think, like when I think about these things, like even the story of the man in the House of Laments, like there's always an origin story.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's some people who are just like evil, and maybe you're like the conversation of like nurture versus nature. But like, I think you can always like dig into someone's psyche and understand at least a little bit with empathy of how they got to where they are. But it's sad that it got to a point where she was willing to impact other people so heavily.
Mm-hmm.
And it was impacting her.
It was impacting her, right? Yes. She herself was unwell. I do wonder if that's one of those things where like when she went to the countryside to make that deal, if there was, again, like that ominous warning where it's like, you're bound now to this deal and it will come back to you in whatever sort of way. Because to me, I'm like, if she had already gone through the process of doing that sort of like curse, I would think that she would go back to the same people to be like, can you help me with my health issues that I'm going through? Is there anything for this? But maybe, it's such a complicated situation.
I don't know. I would love to talk to N. I want to hear N's side of the story just because, but I also don't want to interact with someone who's potentially cursing people, but I just want to know more.
Same.
Like, I feel like we get all the stories from people who have been cursed, but we don't have the stories from people who are cursing.
We'd like to hear from you too. You can be anonymous.
Anonymous, yeah. And
but
just like promise not to curse us, please.
Let us freely judge you, but you can't judge us.
We're already depressed. Just listen to the beginning of this episode and realize that we don't need to be cursed.
No, things are already happening.
We're struggling as is. But if you have any paranormal encounters, please email them to us at twogirlsoneghostpodcast@gmail.com. Aliens, cryptids, ghosts, demons, curses, belly buttons, I don't know. Just everything. Any mystery, really, just email us.
You can find us on YouTube. On Patreon, you get all of the episodes ad-free and 1 week early, both the audio and video version of those episodes. We also have a quarterly book club. Sometimes we do it a little more than quarterly, like right now. And we have some awesome extra bonus content and whatnot over on Patreon. You can also follow us on all of our social medias. We have TikTok, we have Instagram, all that jazz. A new P.O. box in Salem, in case you haven't caught wind of the new address. It's on our website, on our socials. And you can also always check out our website, twogirlsoneghost.com, to find various things like where to watch us, where to listen to us, merch that's available, a link to our Patreon, discount codes from sponsors, etc., etc.
Thank you so much to our editor and producer, Jamie Ryan, for editing our audio and video of every episode that you enjoy and listen to. And thank you to all of you for coming back every week. We love you so much.
And we will see you on the other side.